The first thing that I have to say is I'm going to apologize and say that I'm not be able to do this, unfortunately, because Brazil is a huge country, home to very different realities, which one very unique and which one with very unequal political and material condition, including in scientific production. But I can speak locally based on my own research, which is limited to São Paulo, my city, the largest city in Brazil. From here, we occupy a contradictory place in the center of the periphery. Since 2014, I have been accompanying a group of young scientists, most of who are interested in synthetic biology. From 2015 to 2018, I did a formal field work as part of my master's degree, when I conducted an ethnography on biohacker practices within the University of São Paulo, one of the largest and most recognized universities in Latin America. Since then, I've been with this group of friends. Now they are my friends. What I would like to share with you today are thoughts that I have been working on about what I experienced during the fieldwork and happening since then. Therefore, there are preliminary ethnography data, which I have not yet formalized in an article or a text. And this is why I want to talk with you about it, to think together about these things. What I felt from 2018 from 2023 is that there are significant changes in the biohacking scenario that I'm following. And these changes can help us to think about citizen science in Brazil in a more broader way. During the period that I was in the field work, I was able to follow a series of activities and practices that we could think as hacker practices. The group I was in was a self-organized group made up of undergrads and graduated students. Thiago was within this group too. Thiago, who will speak today. We were organized as a club, and we unfold many projects, most of them motivated by a great joy in learning new things. In my dissertation, I described the making of Seletora. Seletora is a mine bench centrifuge made from scratch by the members of the club, the Clube de Biologia Sintética, Synthetic Biology Club. But we had help of other self-organized groups that were in activity at the time. So in Hardware Club, also at the University of São Paulo, and a hacker space, an autonomous space in São Paulo. At the time, I analyzed such practices from a theoretical framework coming from feminist anthropologies and philosophy of science, describing such practices as a strategy of insistence on a joyful scientific practice that is capable of challenging the intellectual aridity to which many students are subjected, especially in the hard science, where professors often behave like lab owners, relaying repetitive and uncreative tasks to the students. See, incidentally, the imaginative capability of young scientists is constantly castrated and reduced in the process of formation. And in my analysis, I understood the hacker practices that I came into contact with precisely a way to claim back this capability of this imaginative power, which in the end is the very charm of the science itself. Over the time, I was able to understand that this intellectual and creative castration that affects our mental health, including, is not just a problem of Brazil, but this situation was shared by other younger scientists from another part of the world to me. I would like now to tell you briefly what is happening between then and now. I can certainly describe the hacker scene in my city, in the city of São Paulo, during the years of 2014 and to 2017 as vibrant and growing, full of life. From 2017, we already felt that things were changing, and indeed they changed. At the time, there was a great effort by the members of the club to establish a biohacker space, a community lab capable of hosting research that was not necessarily linked to an institutional research project. This effort went in two different directions. On the one hand, we tried to establish an institutional space within the University of São Paulo itself, in a building that was about to be launched and which now houses a research center in synthetic biology. On the other hand, we also tried to build a small laboratory within an already established hacker space in the city of São Paulo. Both attempts failed. Regarding the institutional attempt, we didn't really have much hope on this. We're trying, but we didn't have much hope. The script was very similar to things we had experienced before. At first, the idea was super well received. Then the month passed, and we was cooked in a bain-marie until a bureaucratic monster presents itself in full and puts up so many obstacles that we simply give up of the idea. Our other attempts, the really hacker attempts outside the university, outside the scientific domain, this one, in my opinion, represents a symptomatic situation that of the developments that would come ahead. The attempt to establish this biohacker spaces ended in a fight and a rupture, a situation very motivated by ideological issues that began to emerge at this time. Although the hackerspace was never a space of consensus, it was being, until then, a space for democratic coexistence. However, from 2017, something has changed. In 2016, Brazil underwent a parliamentary coup where President Dilma was removed from the power. In US, at the end of the same year, Donald Trump was elected. Here in Brazil, in 2018, the far-right candidate, Jair Bolsonaro, was elected. In 2017, the researcher Denisa Quera published an article entitled Maker Culture, Liminarity, and Open Source Science Hardware. Instead of making anything great again, keep experimenting, where she describes the co-optation of the idea of making /hacker by the far right, associating these practices with an extreme individualism, an idea present, for example, in the Trumpist slogan, Make America Great Again. In my analysis, the rupture between the members of the club and the members of the hacker space can be also read from this point of view of a political moment of confrontation between individualist positions and a more collective positions. Already in 2019, the first year of Bolsonaro's government, the hacker scene in the city of São Paulo, especially the scene associated with the university, had completed cooled down. Most clubs have reduced or ceased the activities. With the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the situation got much worse. In early 2020, some online projects emerged, such as the development of open source respirators, but these initiatives were also losing steam. I think this is a good image to describe what happened at a faster pace from 2018 until now. Without air, there was a demobilization and a desarticulation of groups that were managing to organize themselves autonomously. As I said at the beginning, what I'm bringing now are some observations that I'm still working on. But I believe that in recent years, there has been a desarticulation, but that doesn't mean abandonment, but nonetheless, a strategic withdrawal to recompose our energies. The biohacking scenario that I'm closest is precisely that is articulated with scientists, citizen science. In recent years, especially in the last 4 years, Brazil science has been under constant attack, whether from budget constraint, from generalized mobilization through a large part of the population. Something interesting to note is also that many of my friends who were undergrads when I did my fieldwork today have migrated to bioinformatics. I point this out because many of the practices that we were carried out were directly related to existing gaps to occupy the wet labs in a more autonomous way, less hierarchical way. However, I believe that as the political situation worsened, such gaps were reduced even more, given the financial constraint that the laboratories themselves were submitted to. Microbiology and genetics are very expensive areas, and I remember how difficult it was to get reagents to carry out the experiments that we have to do. Migrating to bioinformatics seems to me like a logical way to maintain such autonomy and still work in the same area, even away from the bench. But despite these difficulties and the biohacker hibernation that I'm going through, we are still resisting these bad times. And I believe that the experience that will be shared today by the speakers will show a little bit of this. Before giving the floor to them, before giving the word to them, I would like to point out briefly that the science that we produce in Brazil has characteristics that make it especially interesting when thinking about the possibilities of flourishing and maintaining citizen science. Different from our European countries and mainly from the US, in general, the military field has little or almost no participation in the structures of Brazilian science, as well the private sector. Brazilian science is fundamentally founded by public authorities, which certainly brings great autonomy for us researchers to define our research agenda. I myself win a government grant to develop my doctoral research in a modality called social demand, where the merits of my research project is not taken in account for giving me this grant. In addition, the Brazil publication system is also public, which the vast majority of the journals having public access. As well, our index system is financed by the government. We can talk more about these things later. I would like to pass the word to our speakers, who certainly have amazing experience to share with us today. And thank you.
So thank you very much for the invitation. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Eu estou ouvindo algum barulho quando eu falo. Well, you propose three main questions or issues. Why did we become a citizen scientist? In our experience, how does citizen science contribute to science and to social good? And what are the challenges of citizen science in our experience? So next, please. So the citizen science, Clarissa, you can change the slides. The citizen science project that I am currently involved is CIVIS. CIVIS is a citizen science platform developed by the Brazilian Institute of Information in Science and Technology, BICT, which is a research unit of the Brazilian Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation. CIVIS was launched in April 2022 and was developed based on the open source code of the European Union Citizen Science Platform. So CIVIS' objective is to provide infrastructure to give visibility to citizen science groups in Brazil, to offer tools, resources, training, and content to support citizen science projects and initiatives, and to diffuse citizen science concepts and uses. With CIVIS, we intend to contribute to strengthening a community of learning, innovation, and collaboration for social engagement and participation in research activities in Brazil, but also in Latin America. Our idea is to extend to Latin America, other Latin America countries. Next, please. So what are the potential benefits of citizen science? From a more pragmatic perspective is to increase the volume, speed, and quality of research results and lowering costs. But from a more democratic perspective is to give prominence to non-scientists in the formulation of questions, hypotheses, analyses that contribute to new approaches and participatory cultures in the ways of doing science, broadening the scope and the perspective of scientific research. This means to democratize the ways and competences to produce, appropriate, and make use of data and information, and also the capacity to influence decision-making and formulation of public policies. These two perspectives are not opposing perspectives, but must be combined by involving affected populations from the beginning and at various stages of research. Citizen science approaches may result in more robust social learning processes and achieve greater social impact. Next, please. So what have been our main challenges? Our first challenge is how to meet and respond to the wide range of meanings, types, methods, and approaches of citizen science. Even though the contribution of amateurs to science has taken place since at least the 19th century, the term citizen science only appears at the turn to the 1990s. Citizen science initiatives have been expanding worldwide in the last 2 decades, gaining visibility in government and international organizations' agendas, especially in matters related to the Sustainable Development Goals, and now is part of the open science movements. The term citizen science began to be used and developed in Brazil at the end of the first decade of this century. But as in other countries and regions, various modalities of participatory research were already developed at least since the 1980s. Nowadays, there is a diversity of types, actors, and focuses of initiatives that can be framed as citizen science and that should be part of the learning community that participates in CIVIS. We must seek to arouse interest and provide conditions for these various types of initiatives and social groups to use CIVIS as a learning space, which requires adopting a broader concept of citizen science beyond strict scientific research. It's what the anthropologist Arjuna Pardurai calls the right to research. We understand citizen science as the engagement and contribution of non-scientists in research activities in general, that is, in the production and eventually analysis of knowledge, data, and information that can be relevant to science and or to facing issues of social, environmental, and territorial importance. Next, please. The dissemination of citizen science initiatives involves other different challenges besides that, such as scientist engagement, the willingness, capacity, recognition, and validation of scientists to guide and use citizen data. Second, citizen engagement, the willingness of volunteers to contribute to and even lead citizen science projects involving awareness, communication, and education strategies to seek adhesions. Benefits for citizen participants to enable different local groups to make use of the different sets of data available, the explicit recognition of contributions made by citizen scientists, including co-authorship in publications derived from them. Opening and communication of results, strategies to disseminate and give feedbacks on its results and possible uses to the various parties involved and interested. The support of public, private, and non-governmental organizations to develop and maintain relevant citizen science initiatives and infrastructure. And finally, open infrastructure and protocols. That means that on the one hand, new digital platforms and tools facilitate the connection and contribution of citizen volunteers, but it is necessary to provide access to these infrastructures, including access to the internet, especially in poor or remote areas. It also demands technical capacity to develop, make available, and use applications and other necessary devices and infrastructures. So the adoption and dissemination of protocols for managing citizen science data following principles of open science is a key challenge. We must pay attention to the fact that digital platforms, on the one hand, can provide collective intelligence, but on the other hand, they also serve the extraction of data, the exploitation of free voluntary work and vigilantism on the part of the state and the market. So we have to be careful to prevent this from happening in citizen science infrastructure and projects. Next, please. That means considering going beyond the FAIR principle for data management. FAIR principle data should be findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable, but to give also centrality to the CARE principles, collective benefits, authority to control, responsibility, and ethics, proposed by some indigenous people groups. This involves ethical and legal aspects, such as the informed consent of volunteers to possible uses of the data produced, intellectual property systems, license and benefit sharing mechanisms derived from the results achieved by the collaboration. In this regard, the concept of infrastructure must not be naturalized. From a STS, science, technology, and society perspective, infrastructure is a fundamentally relational concept. It is part of social technical arrangements and expresses the power game between social groups with different points of view, interests, and positions. We need to keep this in mind as we develop our citizen science infrastructures. My last point is that a central challenge of citizen science involves the recognition of other epistemologies and narratives, as well the contributions both from the peripheries and from below. The current social environmental crisis corresponds to a crisis of solutions, which demands new ways of approaching problems, other knowledge bases, and also other ways of doing science. Questions have been raised about the epistemic universality of established science. Many point out that Western scientific paradigms have promoted invisibility and created obstacles to the development and recognition of other and more diverse scientific trajectories and types of knowledge that could make room for more sustainable development roads. Next, please. In this context, a set of counter-hegemonic views, next slide, please, on knowledge and science has emerged. They originate from various lines of thought inspired by and inspiring social movements, from environmentalism to feminist and queer theories, anti-racist, post-colonial, decolonial, and subaltern studies, the pedagogy of the oppressed of Paulo Freire, the ecology of knowledges, and the epistemologies of the South. Overall, these lines of thought have sought to make visible the worldviews and epistemic frames of traditional peoples, vulnerable populations, socially stigmatized groups, lay expertise, and also peripheral science, valuing their role to face the present planetary crisis. They propose to promote what they consider to be cognitive justice, among other terms. In this sense, citizen science also supposes the greater porosity of science in its dialogue with this broad spectrum of knowledge-producing actors and spaces. The COVID pandemic brought new ingredients to this scenario. It became more evident the need for new languages, forms, and means of communication, not only in a single way from science to society, but also in the opposite direction, for science to listen to what society has to say and contribute. It implies the overthrowing of hierarchies, of established sources of authority and reputation. This means to avoid turning citizen science into a mere instrument of voluntary work, but rather a sounding board as a possibility of promoting an ecology of knowledge. This is a central issue if you consider the challenge posed to citizen science in scenarios and territories in situations of emergencies and conflicts. These experiments may promote capacity building in the use of community-based data feeding tools and systems in adaptation, mitigation, and resilience actions. Increase learning and the effectiveness of actions and policies in dealing with emergency situations going beyond the so-called expert opinion. Next, please. This is a project that we developed in the southeast coast of Brazil, in Ubatuba, involving local groups debating, producing, and sharing data and information to subsidize and influence the ecological economic zoning policies of that territory. Next, please. And this is a community research project as part of Alain Yuyama postdoc research that I supervised, where we developed also in the same region, southeast coast of Brazil, for social monitoring and adapting to flood risks associated with the effects of the climate emergency. So, concluding, running to the first point of the challenges I listed, this involves promoting engagement and inclusiveness of the growing number of citizen science initiatives that has been developed by vulnerable, at-risk, and affected communities and social groups, impacting by the increasing social, environmental, and healthy emergency situations. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you very much, Claudia. It's very good to be here. And it's always good to listen to Sarita. It's the second time I want to talk by her. It's always inspiring. So I'm not able to present uh, an in-depth analysis of what citizen science is and how the status in Brazil is. So I will do what I can and share a bit of my trajectory that, as Clary mentioned, is related to hers. I was a synthetic biology a scientist, and I was studied by her and became gradually involved with citizen science. At the same time, I am involved with mainstream science. So uh, it will be more like a personal perspective, but I hope this brings some examples and elucidates some of the challenges in the field. So first to start, I, I, I entered citizen science from the science. When I was a kid, a teenager, I went to this international biology Olympiad, and then I fell in love with biology and wanted to be a scientist and started studying things and going to laboratories and doing scientific. I did my undergraduate studies in biomedical sciences in Brazil, and I worked with mice, with zebrafish, with algae, with bacteria, and with algae and bacteria in the context of IGN that was mentioned before, the synthetic biology competition. And then eventually I gave up on all of that and started being a bioinformatician because it's uh, cheaper and faster and more flexible to do in Brazil. But one thing that all of these things have in common is that they are a bit away from societal benefits. So this mainstream science, you do a lot of things. You can have a great impact on society as a whole, but it takes a long time. It takes lots of public money, and it has a lot of uncertainty associated. So you're studying in fish some protein that maybe in the future will be translated into a drug that will help some of the, so it's not super connected. And I felt that as a scientist, uh, I was too distant from the people, right? As Clary mentioned, a lot of the science in Brazil is funded with public money, and I felt that somehow this public money would take too much to return to society in my hands, and I felt that I needed ways to kind of make it faster and contribute this opportunities that the society was giving to me. And one of the ways that I found to do this while I was doing this mainstream sciences was via Wikipedia. Wikipedia, because this is immediate, it's free and it's certain. So the benefit, it's clear. So uh, it was a good balance to balance my long-term scientific activities with this more direct Wikipedia kind of help. And I like to think Wikipedia as a citizen science project, though it's not an activity that generates data. It's an activity that you're sharing knowledge. It's community based. The citizens are empowered to go there and share this knowledge. It enforces plurality of views, so you can go and bring different contents as long as they are evidence based. So the quality of evidence is an important pillar of Wikipedia. So though it's not about generation of new pieces of data and pieces of knowledge, it is about the second part of science, that's sharing the knowledge and doing it in a rigorous and honest way. And then I started working with Wikipedia. One of the first edits that I did was translating the page about the Sci-Hub, the project that frees up scientific articles. I translated that from English to Portuguese. And this page, since then, has been read by 900,000 people. So this is more impact than any scientific article that I will ever write in terms of people that read it. And Wikipedia, you can just, and I translated this page in a couple of hours. So the benefit is really tangible. So it was a good balance with this long-term science and this quick Wikipedia. And this image, as Joy, as you mentioned, IGEM. So this was in 2017. We organized a hackathon in our IGEM group to edit terms on Wikipedia about synthetic biology. So there was this starting and in getting in contact with Wikipedia as a lone activity, and suddenly started became more of a group activity and connecting other people. And all of these people in this benefit that I think it's one of the benefits of citizen science. It's this improving human knowledge and the access to it. So I think citizen science has this power. Traditional science kind of has this power too, but well, citizen science also has it. And then from starting this Wikipedia, I started getting contact with Wiki Movimento Brasil. It's an organization that promotes events, and I started getting contact with this community, these real people, the shared values, the shared activities. And then I started knowing more about open licenses, open data, Wikidata, which is a platform for organizing knowledge, and it became the basis of my PhD studies. So I kind of really entered that world. And inside this context of open data, open knowledge, and talking to these people and Nigel and all of this, somehow iNaturalist appeared on my life. So iNaturalist is a platform where you can take pictures of living things, and it will use AI to try and identify. And if AI fails to identify it, then other people can go and identify this, other scientists. So you kind of, it's a open science, but more in an open naturalism way. It is a way to identify things in the world and share these observations with other people. That's cool. That's really good. And I was already involved with Wikipedia, and then I get involved with this Wiki project Biodiversity, which is a group of people that is centered on using iNaturalist and other biodiversity data that are online, talking to people that are using these platforms, talking to citizen scientists to free their licenses. So people sometimes use licenses that are closed. This licensing issue is always a bit complicated to deal. There are some projects, for example, in Brazil, there's WikiAves, which is a great citizen science project about birds, but they don't use open licenses, so it doesn't fit Wikipedia. So there's a lot of technical things going in the background. But basically, I got together with this group of people whose activity in the free time is to find open license biodiversity data on iNaturalist, add these images to Wikipedia, write articles on Wikipedia about them, and build tools to improve this process. So Clary mentioned the Zynet to Wiki platform. It's a tool that we use internally to try and manage this merging of citizen-produced science with the world of Wikipedia and knowledge. So all of this doesn't involve directly scientists, career scientists. So it's a bit different from some of the projects that Sarita mentioned, that is the interface of citizens and mainstream scientists. But I would argue that still this is already a citizen science project, although a bit less formal than some of the scientific research is or claims to be, at least. But then, yeah, I started working with this iNaturalist, and then back at the time I was living in São Paulo city, which is a huge metropolis. And then and it wasn't the pandemic, so I was not taking buses to go to places, and my mobility was restricted. And I took part at what we call a BioBlitz in iNaturalist. It's a few days that you go around and take pictures of things and shares. And then I went one day to walk around my neighborhood in São Paulo, trying to find things that were living but were not planted, captive, or human. So things that I could put on this naturalist platform. And these were the three things that I found. I found two birds, one mushroom, and one plant that was growing on a tree. And all other things were either human or captive or planted. And that really made me look São Paulo in a different light. So I started looking at my city as an unnatural environment. I started seeing seeing the things that were missing from São Paulo, right? And things that I was personally missing from São Paulo. And that made me realize one of the other social benefits of citizen science, in my opinion, is that it's this increased awareness of the environment when you join a citizen science project. my perspectives, of course, is faulted around Wikipedia and iNaturalist and digital naturalism. But when you are measuring air pollution or hunting river beds or anything like that, you are actively placing yourself in your environment and thinking about it and contributing to science. And when you do that, in my opinion, you can both push for societal change, because now you're seeing all of these things that were there, but you're not looking at it. And you can improve your life. When I saw São Paulo like that, I realized that I was not happy in São Paulo. So I moved. A few months later, less than 1 year later, me and my partner, we moved to the countryside in São Paulo, 1 hour by car. And now I have a rainforest in my backyard. It's a nature reserve, and I see all types of birds and animals and living things. So uh, I, I, I can say that in many ways, like citizen science changed my life in a way that I could realize things about my environment that I couldn't before. And one of the moments that this was strongest to me was when I was in my kitchen. So this picture is about a little beetle that was in my kitchen's bench top. And I was fascinated about this little beetle. It had this very shiny kind of reddish yellow glow, this nice intricate pattern. So I took a picture of it and put on iNaturalist. And the AI couldn't identify what species was, but then a guy called Fernando Fernando Cessegolo, he identified the beetle as Eschirus impresso punctatus. Okay, it's from this species. And then I Googled it, and I couldn't find anything about this. There wasn't a single image, a single text about this. So I asked, wow, how did you identify that? And this citizen scientist, he's a biologist in his working time, but a citizen scientist in a lot of different moments. He identified the beetle based on observation described in Latin in 1876, so 150 years ago. That was the last time that this beetle was registered. And there was the description of it line by line, the colors and the patterns and everything that was in this beetle was described by someone in Latin 150 years ago. And this was the first image of this beetle made ever, the first identifiable image of this. And this, for me, it was crazy, because I was already a scientist for I don't know how much time. And for the first time, I felt, damn, I made a contribution. I did something that I can feel that made a difference in how humanity sees our world. And it was a small thing, but it was very, very impactful for me. And also I realized, damn, it's in my backyard, it's in my home, and it could be in everyone's homes. And realize that even small patches of forest uncover secrets and nature things and wonders that we don't see. So when São Paulo grows and grows and grows, now I don't see just trees being put down and buildings being up, but I see that every patch that is destroyed to build a big factory, a big building, we are destroying lots of these amazing beetles, these amazing little creatures that are unknown to science. And for the first time, I could feel in my hands what is this big extinction that we are all talking about. And for me, this was impactful also because, as I mentioned, I am a scientist, but I'm not used to this kind of eureka moments. But in citizen science, I could find it. So there was a balance an interesting balance. And then I bring this one challenge and one advantage of Brazil. One challenge is this uncontrolled urbanization. We have a lot of urban areas. They are not planned. They are not made for people to live in. They are not made for people to live in a harmony with nature. And that's a piece of our history as a country. But also an advantage of Brazil, we have lots of nature to find, and it's close to home. We don't need to go very far to find this. And there are a lot of Brazilians more than 200 million people in Brazil that share this nature in some way and share challenges. And a lot of them are citizen scientists already, and they are contributing. So it's a way to get in a community that you share a lot of different ties. And in this community, I started getting together with other people. These are two members of the Wikipedia community. Dario was head of research from Wikimedia for 9 years. Andrea is the first author of the paper that is the basis of my PhD studies. And we went to Panama last year to join GOSH, a gathering of open science hardware, but also to take pictures of things and put it on Wikipedia. So it was kind of a trip, an open science, open data, biodiversity kind of trip. And then I realized a lot of things I learned about birding and mothing and micronaturalism and all these different places that you can go when you are being a citizen scientist. And also made me realize how expensive everything is. So if you want to go birding in a high quality, you need a good camera, good lenses, and good binoculars. And if you want a microscope, it's hard to have a good microscope. Of course, you can try and hack one and build one, but it won't be something that is a professional level. And also, you need a good computer, and that's not something that everyone has. And you need free time, and that's definitely something that the average Brazilian doesn't have. So all of these things made me realize how harder it is to do some of these let's say more tech-based citizen science projects in Brazil. And then I had two challenges of this challenge in Brazil. One is the costly scientific equipments, and they are costly in many ways. Importing them is expensive, takes time. We don't have, they're not made for Brazilians. They are adapted for Brazilians. And then you have taxes on scientific equipment, and that's a bit of policy making that could be changed. I don't know if microscopes should be taxed in the same way that cars are, but that's another discussion. And also this lack of free quality time. I mean, who has the time to go around and take pictures of birds? It's not something that the average Brazilian can do because we are overloaded with poor work conditions and huge commuting time. So I think this is one of the challenges for more people doing citizen science in Brazil is the work conditions. I mean, it's having more time in life to go and enjoy life. And then I add another benefit to the social benefits is that it's enabled people to flourish, to go and explore curiosity, to exercise talents in a different way. And for me, I already had the academia as a place to do a lot of that, but it was not enough. So using citizen science and using this kind of decentralized opportunities to do science was core for bridging this gap between what I wanted to do and what I could do in academia. And also empowers our perception in the world, where you are, what our city is. We start looking around and engaging this in a scientific way, and we feel empowered to take a picture of something, and then humanity has learned something. How cool is that? It's really good. And something that I also feel with Wikipedia, right? I translate a page, and now my mother can read about something that she couldn't. This is amazing. So I think these are benefits that are not small in citizen science. So with that, I kind of finish, and I have some take-home messages. So if you have the time and you engage in iNaturalist and Wikipedia, you only need a phone for that. It's expensive if you want to do a lot of things, but if you want to just join the communities, it's cheap and it's welcoming, and you have communities in Portuguese. And I think that this pair, iNaturalist and Wikipedia, is already really good to contribute to science via biodiversity research, via knowledge sharing. And of course, let's push for more harmonious lives with the Brazilian biodiversity. We have a lot of things that we can use with our environment, and we need to think about that, because I think that science is not disconnected from society, and citizen science, it's also not disconnected from society. So there are a lot of societal things that we need to push for if we want citizen science to grow and thrive in Brazil. With that, I finish. I thank you very much for the time. I thank Claudia and Joy for the invitation, and all the other panelists for the discussion. Yeah, that's, thank you very much.
Thank you, Clarissa, for your introduction and your invitation as well. I will focus my speech on the Cunhache actions. So my speech has the title of Promoting Diversity and Inclusion in STEM Beyond Gender. Basically, what I am about to tell you is some actions that we do as a network of women in science. But before I enter in these actions, I will give you a little of a summary of why we do that. So why we focus on why do we need to talk about diversity in STEM? And you see how this what this has to do with citizen science later. So basically we are plural, right? And the different forms of oppression that we have in our society works together, making really harder for some people to actually get into the universities and do science or being a scientist. So in the context is basically that we have an intersectional ways of inequalities and at the Cunhache Network, I am the president and the coordinator of the research group in the Cunhache Network. And we do research on these different types of oppression that we experience in the academic environment, which are basically a reflection of what we see in our society. And we go from multiple discrimination, historical discrimination, to difficulties in career progression. And all these steps, these inequalities that we suffer into science, they start right before we enter in the academic environment. So in this first example I bring here, Luciana and I, we discuss about the influence of our parents and our friends at the school and our teachers at the school on our preferences about the career that we wanted to follow. And when we talk about that, we discovered that we were, of course, we were not the only one, the only girls who was pressured to do other things besides science, to follow other types of careers. And we start to think about how can we change that. And basically, I'm a PhD. I am a professor at the Federal University of Bahia. But along my academic career, I have experienced several issues, several discrimination because I'm a woman. And while in Brazil, I am a white woman, so I still have some privileges that other people doesn't have. But still, I experienced things like oppressions and oral or even physical violence during my my formation as a scientist. So that led me and other girls to discuss about these issues and think about what we call the selective ignorance in science, because in the scientific community, it repudiates the ideologies like creationism or even climatic negationism, but we still accept racism, misogyny, and LGBTQA plus phobia in science. And why do we still accept these issues? Why this paradox is persistent in the academic environment? And perhaps the literature talks about an ignorance, innocent ignorance, which would be because people doesn't understand that these issues exist, or they just don't experience that, because most of the people that are occupying leadership positions in academia are those known as the usual scientists, like white male that is usually from the global north. So these are the ones who dominate science. So they don't experience these issues that we experience as women, or are as part of the LGBTQIA plus community, or as Black people. And well, they don't experience that. But perhaps this ignorance is not really innocent. It's just a strategy to keep this privilege of this minority group. Because if you consider the diversity, the human diversity, a white man that is straight is just a small part of the diversity of humankind. But still they are graced by the political social system, and they want to keep that that privilege, even if they don't understand that they are keeping that privilege. They want to keep it because they are graced by it. So yeah, when in this sense, we need to talk about such issues. And when I said about talking about these issues, I said that we should sow in science. We need to encourage girls and other minority groups interest in the academic career, and other STEM fields, and let them understand that they can occupy these places. They can be scientists. They can become whatever they want to. They can follow the career they want to. And we need to support these girls and other minority groups in the early stages of their careers, to flourish role models, so we can so no one thinks that they cannot become a scientist, or they are not capable of becoming a scientist. And in this sense, I was the co-founder, and I am currently the president of the Cunhacha Network of Women in Science in Brazil, which means powerful women in Guarani and Yoruba, which are Guarani is an indigenous language, and Yoruba is an African language. And the idea of the supporting network is, as the name says, give support to minorities, to underrepresented groups in science, and those who want to become scientists. These networks, such as the Cunhacha networks, are good to provide professional growth, partnerships, solutions for these types of discriminations, support for these people that are still underrepresented in science, give them empowerment to actually occupy leadership positions, and to not give up from their dreams, not give up from their careers along the way. And of course, creating collaboration between people that are experiencing the same issues, and are feeling that they must remain in science to change this type of pattern that we have so far. So mentoring relationships must be diverse, and we must follow these types of we must try to provide a diverse mentor network. This can help advance the careers for both mentors and mentees, potentializing diversity and other initiatives as well. So For that, we have several actions in Cunhasha network. And one of the actions is to actually promoting, as I mentioned before, the entering and the of young girls and young people from different minorities in the academic environment, in the scientific world. So when we do that, when we promote these diverse environments, we can understand better how the people think, like the diversity of thinking from different people from different backgrounds. It promotes better learning, working and learning experience. It promotes new research perspectives as well, since people from different realities can think differently. And so they can think about different questions. They can think about different perspectives to perform research, high quality research. And we can encouraging more people to work with science. So when we have a diverse mentorship program or a diverse department at our university, at our institutes, we can show people that are not scientists that they can occupy these places. They can also be part of it, because they can see us as they can see us as role models, as I mentioned here, right? So for that, one of the actions, as I was telling you, one of the actions of the Cunhasha network is called the Sewing Science Project. And I'll talk a little bit about this project with you. It started in 2020 in the amidst the pandemic. It was a completely remote edition in 2020, when we were focused on a public school in Brazil, specifically in Bahia state, where I am right now, which is in the northeast of the country. And the city where these school are is a small city from the metropolitan region of Salvador. And we were trying to show the kids in this school that they could, if they want to, they could become scientists if they are willing to do so. So what we did was inviting different scientists from different realities, from different subjects, to speak to them. And it was interesting because we were remotely talking to them through a computer, and we did like different talks with different scientists. And in one of these talks, I was present there, and I spoke a little bit about my work as a herpetologist. I work with lizards and snakes and amphibians. And well, I am a woman, and a girl that was watching the talks, she spoke to me like, I never thought that I could work with snakes. I thought this was something that just men could do. And I told her that if she wants to work with snakes, that there are plenty of women doing that too. And she said that if she ever follow the biology course in the graduates, in the undergrad, she would do that because of my talk at that day. And that was really nice to hear, because that was the whole point of the project by that time. And we focus on women in this first edition. So we were talking about different realities in the academic environment, different areas. And we were a team of over 20 researchers, 20 women researchers, talking about different lines of research and different areas, and talking about physics, and talking about mathematics, talking about chemistry, and the students were just they just couldn't believe that we have a lot that amount of women working in that amount of different subjects. So after this first edition, our second edition was in 2021, and it named it Sowing Science, Carrying the Seed. And the idea of the second edition, was to make a follow-up in the same school. And by that time, we wanted to speak to the girls and make them to develop some activities, some scientific activities based on several activities that we proposed to them. So we brought like a game that we produced as a network, memory game to the youngest girls, and with different names of different women names in science in different areas. We give them this memory game, and we apply this memory game with them. And we also did some workshops considering different areas, different STEM areas, and we separate the girls into different groups according to their interests in science. And it was really nice because they developed some ideas of research, and they were thinking about how to actually live as a scientist. And for that, we also did visiting. We brought this school into the university later in 2022 when the university was working normally again. And we invited the school to the university, and they were visiting the labs, and they were actually experiencing the academic environment in full. And that brings us to the third edition in 2022, which was the Sowing Science, Girls in the Field. And that was a really nice edition, because that was when we actually, in this edition is that where we can talk about citizen science together with the gender issue and the inclusion and diversity in STEM fields. Because in this edition, we promoted, we give the opportunity to the students to actually do science. So they were invited to go to the field and experiencing the field work and they were those who were actually collecting data, analyzing this data in the lab, and returning some their conclusions regarding that data. So it was focused on insects. It was a partnership between the Cunha Network, the British Council, and the Butantan Institute in São Paulo. And we did that in several schools around the country. We first did a training with the professors, with their teachers, and this training was just for the teachers being aware about how to collect that data, how to analyze that data, how to approach the main topic besides the field, which was the issues, the biases in the academic environment, and how we need to promote diversity and inclusion. And the teachers applied this knowledge with the kids, and the kids were responsible to actually do the science. And at the end of the year, that takes the whole year, like during their classes, they were working in their scientific projects, and by the end of the year, they present their results in events that the teachers promoted at their own school. So the kids were actually developing research by their own during that period. And considering the success of this third edition, we now are in 2023, we will start another the fourth edition of the Sewing Science. And in that case, in this year's edition, our focus would be in traditional communities of Brazil and global changes. So our actions will be similar to those from last year, but now we will focus on schools from traditional communities, including in schools that are located in Quilombola regions, in indigenous lands, and also from the riverine part in the Amazon. So we will get we'll get this knowledge, this scientific knowledge, and we will exchange knowledge with these traditional communities, bringing to our action more exchange than we just teach them how to do it. So they will bring their knowledge, their traditional knowledge, to the methods that we will apply for them. And we will bring the scientific knowledge, and we will exchange that with the kids and also with teachers from these schools. So we are working on this fourth edition right now. It will probably begin in April, and we have contact with schools from different parts of Brazil. And the idea is that these people from traditional communities can to stimulate them to become leaders in their communities, not only scientists, but also leaders in their communities, and focus on the global changes and how we can fight the global changes inside their communities, how they can actually be leaders fighting the changes that we are already experiencing, like climate change and biodiversity loss. So that's our goal in 2023's editions for the Sewing Science project. And here are some pictures of the action from last year. So the kids were basically doing everything by themselves. We just give them some tools so they can actually do that. And then they were super happy of being scientists for a year, because that was what they were. And they already some of these kids already contacted us again this year to try to develop another project. We are trying to find funding for like fellowships for them to actually work in the universities from their states. They are from different states. So yeah, it's a way of stimulating people from outside the academia to think scientifically and think about producing scientific knowledge. And now we want to we want to provide the scientific knowledge together with traditional knowledge, so we can perhaps develop some solutions to the global changes and some solutions for local changes as well. And yeah, another picture for you of one of the teams, one of the scientific teams that were working on the Sewing Science project last year. And that's it. Thank you for listening to me, and I'm open to questions.
Adriano Sampaio, eu sou permacultor e um ativista pelas águas. Eu iniciei meu trabalho em 2013, quando eu me juntei com um grupo na Pompeia, um coletivo Ocupe e Abrace. A gente ocupou uma praça e nesta praça havia 8 nascentes do rio Água Preta. Então a gente começou a fazer um trabalho lá, a gente fez a criação de alguns lagos, criamos um microecossistema com peixes e plantas aquáticas. A partir dali, meu interesse pelos rios de São Paulo cresceu. Eu comecei a investigar os rios da cidade. São mais de 300 rios em São Paulo. Eu escolho uma bacia hidrográfica da cidade, consultando mapas e vou a campo, tentando identificar essas nascentes para saber como elas estão e para saber a situação dos rios da cidade, sendo que 70% dos nossos rios já foram canalizados. Então eu encontro muitos rios abertos na periferia. Então quando eu saio pela cidade para encontrar esses rios e nascentes, eu vejo uma outra cidade. Eu vejo uma cidade possível, que é possível ter a natureza e os nossos rios de volta. Eu imagino uma cidade com vários parques lineares. Parques lineares são parques que seguem o curso do rio, com uma mata ciliar, com trilhas nesse lugar, com lugar de drenagem, né, grandes lagoas, né, em vez de piscinões, para conter as enchentes. E uma qualidade de vida maior. Acredito que tiraria muitos carros da rua, né? Porque São Paulo é uma cidade que foi feita para os automóveis. E eu comecei também a fazer intervenções. Onde eu encontro uma nascente que é possível fazer uma intervenção, eu organizo um mutirão com as pessoas do próprio território. Algumas vezes eu converso com o poder público, eu procuro envolver todas as pessoas, porque mesmo que não tenham conhecimentos técnicos, porque todos somos responsáveis pelo meio ambiente. Então a minha iniciativa é para trazer luz sobre esse assunto, né? Que são os nossos rios e as águas que a gente tem aqui, né? E que não é pouca, né? São mais de 300 rios e a gente percebe a presença deles quando tem enchente, né? Porque muitas partes da cidade têm alagamentos, então, porque as pessoas construíram em lugares que são a várzea do rio, né? Que é o fundo de vale, onde geralmente algumas determinadas épocas do ano fica alagada essas regiões. Então, eu procuro organizar esses mutirões para fazer uma regeneração na nascente e a criação de lagos, com peixes, plantas aquáticas, anfíbios, plantas da Mata Atlântica, para chamar a atenção sobre a questão da água e dos nossos rios. O quanto é importante, né, a gente estar repensando a maneira como as cidades foram feitas, que enxergavam o rio como um empecilho para o desenvolvimento. E ao contrário, né, a água ela tem que fazer parte da paisagem. Sendo que no futuro eu acredito que um dia nós vamos ter que utilizar essas águas, né? Porque essa lógica de trazer água de longe, no caso aqui de São Paulo vem o sistema Cantareira, né? Ela vem do interior, a água, e eu acho isso uma coisa sem lógica, né? Trazer água de longe, sendo que temos água aqui na cidade. O que existe é um mau uso dela, né? Não existe uma política, né? De realmente pensar, né? De uma maneira de que a natureza ela também tem que estar integrada à cidade, né? A gente não precisa estar na Amazônia para estar lutando pelas causas ambientais. A gente pode fazer isso dentro da cidade mesmo, né? Porque os urbanistas, como eu disse, viram os rios como um empecilho, né? Então está na hora de mudar essa lógica, de trazer isso, né? Porque hoje a gente não pode ter contato com o rio, né? Porque o mau cheiro espanta a gente, né? E se a gente tiver contato, a gente pode pegar alguma doença, né? Alguma virose, então não dá, né? Eu falo que o mau cheiro não é do rio, né? O mau cheiro é a gente mesmo, né? Porque a gente que causou isso nos nossos rios, a degradação. E eu vendo um rio como esse aqui, né, do lado de casa, eu tenho esperança, né? Esse rio nasce aqui no Pico de Jaraguá, passa por dentro de 2 aldeias indígenas, está dentro da cidade. A rua já está aqui a 30 metros, né? Se olhar para esse lado aqui, mostra ali um pouquinho. Você vê que já tem casas ali, né? E a rua já é ali. Então a gente está no meio urbano mesmo. E esse trabalho meu é para chamar atenção mesmo e para unir as pessoas, né? Porque a gente não precisa esperar que o poder público tome conta de todas as áreas verdes, dos recursos hídricos que tem na cidade. O cidadão comum também tem que fazer seu papel, fiscalizar e fazer ações também, né? Pequenas ações que podem virar ações maiores, né? O que eu faço hoje, essas intervenções em praças, criando lagos e microecossistemas, é para poder virar uma coisa maior no futuro, né? Espero que alguém apareça e comece mesmo a fazer o trabalho de despoluição dos rios e de destamponá-los, né? Trazer eles de volta, né? Os rios que foram asfaltados, por exemplo, recuperar eles, né? Renaturalizar esses espaços, né? Eu sei que é quase impossível abrir todos os rios da cidade, mas existem vários trechos possíveis de se abrir, né? Que se tornariam lugares de convivência, né? Você vê, por exemplo, as grandes capitais do mundo já estão recuperando seus rios. O rio Sena, né, por exemplo, tem uns jardins filtrantes, né, com plantas macrófitas. E essa água depois vai parar numa piscina na beira do Sena, onde as pessoas podem se banhar à vontade. Então a gente pode também usar a própria natureza ao nosso favor, né? Através da fitorremediação das plantas, né? A zona de raízes de diversas plantas, as chamadas plantas macrófitas, elas são capazes de despoluir um rio. Então a gente não precisa usar uma tecnologia tão sofisticada, né? A gente pode usar a própria natureza, né? A biotecnologia no caso, né? Então, para mim é esse o caminho, né? Eu sei que é um grande desafio mesmo, né? Para a gente estar numa cidade muito adensada, né, de população, né, onde ainda não há o tratamento universal de esgoto. A gente vê a maioria dos rios da periferia poluído, né, e muitas comunidades na beira desses rios, né, sem nenhum saneamento, sem nenhuma qualidade de vida, sujeita a várias doenças, né, mas não é culpa dessas pessoas elas estarem lá, né. Isso é uma culpa do sistema, né, que jogou elas lá, porque elas não têm moradia e por última opção acabam indo morar num lugar que consequentemente vai degradar o rio, né, toda essa urbanização, né, densa, né, e a falta de moradia faz isso, né, porque as pessoas não têm a opção. Então, a regeneração dos nossos recursos hídricos anda em conjunto com essa coisa da moradia, né? Moradia popular para as pessoas, né? E também atrair as empresas para esses lugares. Porque em São Paulo tudo é no centro, né? A maioria das empresas são tudo centralizadas, né? Avenida Paulista, Centro, Faria Lima e outros locais, né? Então está na hora de estender isso para a periferia. E eu acho que o mote para trazer essas empresas é justamente a recuperação desses lugares, né? Com parcerias público-privadas e com participação do cidadão comum, né? Eu acho muito importante que as próprias pessoas do território, os moradores, também participem da gestão dos recursos naturais que existem dentro do território dela. Eu acho muito importante, né? E também que no futuro essas pessoas sejam capacitadas para virarem guardiões e recebam renda, né, do poder público e das empresas, né? Porque eu acho que só assim, com o envolvimento de todos, porque eu acho que é uma cadeia, ninguém deve ficar de fora e todo mundo tem que ter o seu devido valor dentro dessa parceria, né, público-privada, que envolve principalmente o cidadão que está lá em contato todo dia, né, com esse recurso natural, com esse rio, ou com um espaço de verde, uma praça pública, um parque, né? Então é importante que as pessoas entendam também isso, né? Que o nosso território é uma extensão da nossa vida, né? É o quintal da minha casa, né? Eu não restringo a minha vida só à propriedade privada, né? Eu vejo como um todo, né? Eu tô aqui do lado de uma aldeia indígena, onde também eu tenho um trabalho, né, de manejo de água na aldeia Itacupê aqui no Jaraguá. Lá eu aprendo muito, né, com os povos indígenas, principalmente esse senso de cuidado, né, de respeito, para respeitar cada ser vivo do planeta, né, que tudo tem sua função, né, tudo está conectado, né. Se, por exemplo, se continuar desmatando na Amazônia, corre o risco de São Paulo virar um deserto, faltar água. Então está tudo conectado, né? Você vê que quando teve aquele crime ambiental no Rio Doce, a febre amarela desceu para cá, né? Então a gente está conectado com o mundo inteiro, né? Porque o planeta, ele é um ser vivo, né? Já tem várias teorias, né? De cientistas que falam, né? Os indígenas falam muito isso, né? Se a gente continuar desmatando, derrubar a última árvore, o último peixe for pescado, o céu vai cair, né? E há pouco tempo, uns 2 anos atrás, a gente viu o céu de São Paulo totalmente escuro, resultado das queimadas. Então, é muito sério o que está acontecendo agora, né? A gente está em época de mudanças climáticas, então a gente tem que fazer hoje, né? Pensar, sabe, seriamente nisso, porque as futuras gerações podem sofrer, né? A gente já está sofrendo agora, né, com isso, né? Então imagina as futuras gerações, né? Pode faltar água, pode faltar comida. Então, já teve até guerra, né, pela falta d'água, né, na Bolívia, né? Então, aqui em São Paulo tivemos uma crise hídrica muito séria, né, em 2014, 2015. Que a água das torneiras ela vinha cor de barro, né, em alguns locais. Em alguns locais mais afastados, as pessoas nem tinham água. Elas recorriam, nas periferias, a bicas e nascentes, que geralmente algum líder comunitário sabe da existência e indicava para essas pessoas, né? Então as pessoas recorriam às bicas e nascentes. Por isso que eu acho que é necessário que a gente comece hoje a recuperar os rios e nascentes aqui da capital, porque um dia nós vamos precisar dessa água, né? E nós temos água disponível, né? Temos mais de 300 rios, né? Isso no mapa oficial, porque tem mais rios que 300, né? Você pode multiplicar por 2 ou 3, porque quando eu saio para fazer meu trabalho, eu acabo encontrando alguns riachos que não estão no mapa oficial. Então temos água disponível, né? O que temos é um mau uso dela. O que a gente precisa é de uma política pública que valorize, né, a água na paisagem e pense com carinho, né, e amor sobre esse assunto, porque no futuro a gente vai precisar dessa água, porque a gente tem pouca água disponível no planeta. E essa pouca que a gente tem que ter cuidado com ela, né, preservar. Eu sei que é um desafio, né, mas a gente está num momento extremo, né, de eventos extremos climáticos. Então, chegou a hora de fazer, né, essa mensagem que eu deixo, né. Eu tento fazer meu trabalho, né, eu busco parcerias para abrir o rio lá da aldeia, né. A gente está tentando, não é fácil, mas eu tenho fé, né, eu acredito que a gente pode sim, né, contribuir com o meio ambiente, né? Não existe só ação predatória do homem, existe ação benéfica também. E é isso, obrigado a todos. E quem quiser conhecer meu trabalho, tem no Facebook a página Existe Água em SP e no Instagram estou como adriano.sampaio3. Obrigado.
Bom, primeiro quero agradecer o convite e dizer a todos que o caminho para a regeneração do meio ambiente é a união de todo mundo, né? Eu acho que ninguém pode ficar de fora, desde a grande empresa, o poder público, até o cidadão comum, tem que participar deste processo, porque o meio ambiente é responsabilidade de todos. E devido à situação de mudanças climáticas, precisamos agir, né? Porque é urgente que sejam feitas ações de regeneração das florestas e dos rios. Só
Eu
isso.
vou. Beleza, vou falar para eles então. Adriano was highlighting that for having into consideration restoration or regeneration perspective, what must be done is that we must unite ourselves in this effort. He says that both big companies and ordinary citizens are equally responsible for the regeneration efforts. And most of all, it must be done together. And if he can say something that is most important, it would be this, that it is a responsibility of everyone and all of us. And facing, as we are facing extreme climate changes, Adriano just talked in the video about some of these events, for example, the hydric crisis in São Paulo, and he urges us to start doing it now. And he again thanks everyone for listening to him.